When Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was first revealed, many non-Japanese speaking hardcore Persona fans started getting impatient and a little bit paranoid that Atlus and Omega Force forgot to translate Persona 5 Scramble and that they'd never get around to it. But just like I predicted, the international release finally ended up seeing the light of day, because I mean, of course it was gonna, even if there was a name change for some reason. However, while that's all well and good, Atlus decided not only to let people who pre-order the game digitally play it 4 days early, but they also thought it'd be a swell idea to give them exclusive content on top of that, and if you ask my booty, I think that's a slight scam. Not a huge irredeemable deal-breaking scam that really bothers me all that much, but still a slight scam nonetheless. So put down your remote control for your uncle's dialysis machine, make sure you're already subscribed if you like games, goofs, and glory, and allow me, YouTube's #2 hunk camera in all one word, to tell you why the Persona 5 Strikers Digital Deluxe pre-order is a tad bit lame. Alright, so first and foremost, Persona 5 Strikers, aka Scramble, already came out an entire year earlier in Japan, so if you managed to avoid spoilers for that long, then a handful of people playing the localized version digitally a few days early shouldn't be that big of a deal, and for me personally, it's really not. But the thing that bothers me the most is the whole principle of the matter. You see, gamers are gonna argue on the internet about digital versus physical all day, every day until the end of time, excluding Christmas, of course, and I could open that can of worms up here, but to save you a bunch of time, the arguments usually boil down to physical people agreeing that digital has some perks, but that they ultimately prefer the preservation aspect of it, while also having the option to trade, sell, and let friends or enemies borrow their games, whereas the digital people, on the other hand, just won't hear any of that, and I'm sure most of them have already disrespected me and my family in the comments and left already, but at the end of the day, it's never really mattered what you prefer, because both versions have always been the same in the past up until now. However, now that Atlus went to the lengths that they did to encourage people to buy digital, it kinda does matter a little bit. Obviously, the whole reason Atlus and just about any other publisher in history would prefer digital sales has got nothing to do with promoting social distancing, but rather so they don't have to split the profits with retailers, and mainly because physical media costs way more for them to make, and it can also be a little bit risky since some games are never guaranteed to sell very many copies, so I totally understand why Atlus would give some kind of incentive for us to buy digital. In fact, I'm shocked things like this haven't been happening more often considering all the other digital malarkey that's been going on in the past decade, like on-disc DLC, but not only do I think that Atlus went about it the wrong way here, they're also one of the last companies who should have tried something like this, given that their physical releases are usually special, which is one of the main reasons why their fanbase loves them so much in the first place, by the way. So not only is it shady, but it's also just plain weird coming from Atlus, because even though they have done some sketchy things before in the past, they've always treated physical collectors very well. Man, it's almost like they're punishing people for not buying digital, and if it were just the early release, then I'd still think it's lame, but I wouldn't make a video about it or anything, since, again, the game's technically already been out for an entire year, and I can also remember plenty of times where I've gotten physical pre-orders a few days early, with Cyberpunk being the most recent example. So like, no, it's not the end of the world for this one game to let people play the digital version first for a few days, but the thing that really steams my clams is the fact that it is actual content that you can only get through the digital pre-order. Man, I know that different retailers have always gotten different physical pre-order bonuses for pretty much every game in history, including Strikers though, so depending on who you ask, the physical pre-order bonus still might have the overall advantage for Strikers anyway, but on top of the early access, that's not even gonna matter for more than a week though. The digital version also comes with actual content that technically makes this the best version of the game. Granted, the content only makes the game like an ass hair better, since we're only talking about stuff like bonus music from the first 4 Persona games and skill packs, but it's still lame to include any content in one version of the game that's not in the other. I get that digital people might always felt like they were being left out with pre-order bonuses in the past, but steelbooks and pins are exactly what bonuses should be, whereas in-game content on the other hand is crossing the line if you ask me, and I don't see why the legacy tracks and skill packs aren't just included in all the pre-order bonuses. Sure, all the pre-orders come with digital soundtracks, art books, and behind-the-scenes videos, but like, why make anybody feel like they're getting the lesser version of the game if we're all paying the same price? I mean, there's some people out there who really wanted the Steelbook, but this whole fiasco made them unsure if they should get the slightly superior game instead, which is kind of the whole point, I get it, but the key here is that people like this are still gonna have a certain level of unhappiness, shame, and regret after their purchase, and I don't think that should ever be the goal. And even though I don't think that the whole early access thing's really that big of a deal, I still can't help but feel like it's kind of punishing the physical players. Part of me kind of feels like the whole early access side of the deal is only being done because the Japanese version was already a year old at the time of the English release, and that anybody could have just bought it digitally the entire time. And for those of you who don't know, if you buy a foreign version of a game on the Switch and play it with an account based in an English-speaking region, then the Switch is going to play the game in English as long as the localization for it exists, which is how I played Yoshi's Crafted World while I was in Japan at the time that game came out. So I kind of feel like the people who own the Japanese Persona 5 Scramble just might magically be able to play the localized version, but I don't know, maybe I'm just kind of rambling here. For all I know, the early access is probably just possible because the digital versions of games are usually uploaded to online stores and even downloaded to consoles in advance, so that's probably more likely. All I know is that I just think there's better ways to go about enticing people to buy digital versions of games than by letting them play a little bit earlier, and especially by giving them exclusive in-game content. Like, if physical games are riskier and cost publishers more money to make, then why aren't the digital versions a little bit cheaper? I feel like some people would think that's even more unfair to physical gamers than a few extra songs in early access, but if you ask me, I've always thought it was unfair that publishers have been charging full price for digital games this entire time. I mean, after all, they're saving money on these versions and not taking nearly as big of a risk, so why didn't the price ever go down too? I used to think that this was so retailers didn't get pissed off, but if early access and slightly superior versions of games aren't gonna piss them off, then frig it, lower the prices too, you dinguses. Hell, they could even lower the prices to where they're still making more off of the digital sales than the physical ones. I don't care at all, because either way, I'd still be buying the physicals for all the other benefits regardless. And if Atlus's little experiment becomes commonplace in the gaming industry, then that just plain sucks if you ask me. However, if it really is just a one-time thing though, then I'll let it slide and enjoy Persona 5 Strikers, even though I will still boop Atlus on the nose, because at the end of the day, it's really not that big of a deal to me, seeing as how I already pre-ordered the Steelbook edition immediately after learning about all this malarkey thanks to Dammit Louie on Twitter. And if you're wondering why I made an entire video about something that I'm claiming I'm really not all that upset about, then, well, I'm a YouTuber, I don't know. That's kind of what I do, just make videos on things that are going on in the gaming world that are on my mind. But anywho, let me know what you think about the Persona 5 Strikers digital malarkey in the comments below, and as always, I'll try my goddamnedest to respond to everybody at some point. But that's all for today, though. If you liked this video, then you might like my video about why Persona 5 Royal's a slight scam that I'm also not upset about, seeing as how it's my all-time favorite game. But if you'll excuse me, though, I gotta go bribe the guy at Circuit City to let me take my physical copy of Strikers home a few days early. See ya.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.